Just one more reading, Tsongkhapa's final exposition of wisdom. In one who sees self, there is always adherence to I. Through the adherence, there is attachment to pleasure. Through attachment, thoughts are obscured and eventually seen, whereby there is a strong attachment. The mind are taken up as means of achieving pleasure. Hence, as long as there is attraction to self, so long one revolves in cyclic existence. Although the system of this passage differs from the mode of positing two apprehensions of self, in the consequences school, as explained above, the stages of how afflictive emotions are produced, according to the consequences school, can be antecedent dependence on it. Moreover, initially when the I, that is the object of preservation of the thought, I is apprehended to exist by way of its own character, desire with respect to self, and generated. That generates attachments to the self-pleasure. Also, since the self-pleasure is not independent but depends on the mind, there is attachment to the mind. Obscure the disadvantages of the mind, that this attachment brings about perception of the mind as advantageous. Then, the mind are taken up as means of achieving self-pleasure. With afflictive emotions produced in this way, actions are undertaken. Through actions, in turn, the connection is made to a new cyclic existence. Nagarjuna 70 stanzas 126. Contaminated karmas are caused by afflictive emotions. Having a nature of afflictive emotions and karmas, the body is caused by contaminated karmas. Even all three are empty of inherent existence. You should train the stage of how beings evolve in cyclic existence this way until a certainty is gained, showing that one wishing to abandon the apprehension of self should seek the view of selflessness. This has two parts. The reason why, if you wish to abandon ignorance, you should seek the view of realizing selflessness, and how to generate the view of realizing selflessness. Reason why, if you wish to abandon ignorance, you should seek the view of realizing selflessness. A state of extinguishment in which the two apprehensions of self, the ignorance explained above, have been abandoned should certainly be wanted and appears indeed to be wanted. Nevertheless, despite its being wanted, there are those two do not strive at understanding how the apprehension of self comes to be the root of cyclic existence, or although they see a portion of that, do not strive for the sake of generating the pure view of selfness, and they continue upon having refuted well, with reasoning in scriptures of definitive meaning, the object apprehended by the apprehension of self. They have very due faculties, for although they have forsaken the life of the path of progress to liberation and omniscience, they are not concerned about it. Therefore, the glorious Dharmakirti commentary on Dignaga's compilation of prime cognition says, without rejecting, through reasoning, the conceived object of the apprehension of self, this apprehension of self cannot be abandoned by meditating on self as having defects and so forth. The abandonment of desire, hatred, and so on, which are generated due to being related to the perceived advantages of happiness and disadvantages of unhappiness, is true not seeing those advantages and disadvantages and object in accordance with how they are apprehended by desire, hatred, and so forth, that is to say, through properly seeing that those do not exist, not through external ways, as when removing a form that has pierced the body. When an external object of abandonment, such as thorn, that has pierced oneself is removed, it can be removed from the root with a needle, for instance, without depending on a process of rejecting, that is, realize the non-existence of the object as it's apprehended. However, when an internal object of abandonment is not done this way, rather it must be abandoned through seeing the non-existence of the object as it's apprehended by, for instance, the apprehension of self. That's it. Tsongkhapa's final exposition of wisdom.